Hello and welcome to today's session, The Deep Tech Difference, brought to you by SGInnovate and Hello Tomorrow in partnership with OVHcloud. My name is SzeKi Sim and I am the Executive Director of the Community and Brand team at SGInnovate. Just for those of you who don't know us, a very quick intro into SGInnovate. We are a private entity owned by the Singapore government. And we believe that the world has challenging issues and deep tech has the potential to address some of these issues. So what we do is we work with deep tech startups from Singapore to help them to scale and grow. And we do this by investing in startups, developing talent and matching them with startups, and organizing sessions such as this to drive conversations around important topics and how the role of deep tech innovation. Since we've moved all our events online because of COVID, we have found that we get participants joining us from all over the world. So please tell us where you're joining us from using the chat function below. And I encourage you to take this time to connect with your fellow participants so that we can continue this conversation even after the session ends. Do engage with the panelists as well and take the opportunity to ask them questions because Ernest, the moderator, will certainly be addressing them. This event is co-organized with Hello Tomorrow, and it brought back very fond memories of how I first met Ernest, who heads Hello Tomorrow Asia Pacific back in 2017. At that stage, we were both at the start of our deep tech journey. SGInnovate was still very new, and I believe it was just before Ernest started working with Hello Tomorrow. Since then, we've worked very closely with Hello Tomorrow to fly the deep tech flag. So I do consider Hello Tomorrow to be one of our oldest partners. I'm especially looking forward to hearing from our next speaker, Massimo Portincaso, who is the chairman of Hello Tomorrow, and he'll be taking us through some of the fresh perspectives and approaches needed to usher in a new wave of innovation with deep tech. Before I hand things over to Massimo, I'd like to again thank Hello Tomorrow and OVHcloud for making this event possible. So without further ado, I'd like to hand this time to Massimo, please.
Thank you, SzeKi. So I will share my screen so that you can see the slide and the presentation. So here we go. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to share and discuss with you what I really like to call the deep wave of innovation. And it's not just the pun on the word deep tech and deep wave, but the wave that is coming is really big. And I think it's really important to put it in context because as SzeKi was saying, a few years ago, people were not even knowing what deep tech is, and now there is everybody talking about deep tech. So what is deep tech after all? And before going into the description, I would like to set some context because what is really striking in this point in time is that we're living in a time in which innovation is coming from startups that was inconceivable time ago, or even private companies are doing things that states used to do in the past. So right now, the race to space is between Origin Blue and SpaceX, two private companies. It used to be between the US and Russia. So imagine this shift, how this is happening. How can private company have access to the technology to be able to put people in space or even some aiming to go and colonize Mars? How is this possible? What is happening? Why this is happening now? And it's not only about space. If you look at their private companies that are working at creating nuclear fusion, which is something that in the past and still today is an endeavor that is funded with billions by state entities. So what is happening in this context? And I think that it's really important to go back and go to the start of it and understand how the different waves of innovation, and that's why this wave is really important to be understood. The first wave of innovation came with the first and the second industrial revolution. This is the point in time where basically the foundation of our current civilization was set. And this is when we had processes that are still in place today were developed, like Haber-Bosch, which is the process developed to produce ammonia, which is necessary to produce nitrogen for nitrogen fixation, so for a fertilizer. The process, the Bessemer process to produce steel, those were all breakthrough innovation. We had electricity, radio, the internal combustion engine was developed then, and this was really what laid the foundation. After this foundation, there was a second wave that came starting around the Second World War, and the war triggered a lot of innovation. And we had a period of time between the 50s and the 80s where there was really the big corporate labs like Xerox PARC, the Bell Labs, but also NASA and IBM developing these big projects. This is the point in time where the state working with these big corporate labs develop plans and missions like the one that literally brought us to the moon. But this is also the point in time where we created the computer. This is the era of the creation of the computer. This wave started ebbing a little bit with end of the 70s, early 80s, because some regulatory changes, some change in the environment, and it gave birth to the third wave of innovation, which is the wave that building, each of these waves is building on the previous one. So with the third one, there was a shift of the funding of this innovation from corporate and state to venture capital being really one of the core driver of this innovation. This is the point in time that gave us Apple, Microsoft, but also Google, Facebook, but also Genentech. And this is, titans of venture capital like Sequoia or Kleiner Perkins that was really driving this kind of innovation. And this was building on the previous one. So the computer became of age in this space. We had biotech that became and created a certain set of blueprints for innovation that were mostly driven by the digital transformation that was happening, and also a lot was happening on the biotech side. What is happening today is that we are entering a new wave of innovation that is building on the previous three, but is fundamentally different. And this is where we really need to understand, and this is what many people start talking about, is what we call deep tech today, is this wave is combining and is bringing together bits and atoms. And the combination of the two, as we're going to see, is really creating a different wave of innovation. It's focused less on the digital or the biotech side, but is really about the bringing together the bits and the atoms. And it requires a different approach toward financing, like institutions like SGInnovate that were not thinkable 10, 15 years ago, that are entering into the place because it requires a different set of skill to be able to understand. So what are the characteristics of the company that are operating in this space? There are four key characteristics that we have seen. The first one is, as I said, is really, it's not only about software, it's about physical products, it's about bits and atoms. This is really important. The second point is that the level of complexity of what is happening now, when you start bringing bits and atoms together, the level of complexity increases significantly, and they operate within an overall ecosystem. So this is an important component. The other very important characteristic is that they are addressing fundamental issues. It's not about an optimization. It's not about coming up with a new business model, but it's about really solving fundamental problem. And as we're seeing, they're playing at the convergence of technology. And this is a very, very important point that we need to look at. So how this translate these four characteristics and this fourth wave, and what is really deep tech? So the first thing, which is really important, if there is one thing I want you to take away out of the conversation today, deep tech is not about technology. Technology are something different. And it's not about saying this technology is a deep technology or not. Deep tech is an approach toward innovation. The same way when Clayton was talking about innovator's dilemma, I was talking about disruptive technology, and then he moved away from talking about disruptive technology because it's the use of the technology that makes the technology disruptive or not. It's not the technology per se. The same is true for deep tech. So deep tech is an approach toward innovation, and this is really important. And how this approach toward innovation looks like, and how is this taking place, and what do you need to bring on? The first thing is to realize is that the core characteristic of deep tech today is that dramatically expands the option space. So if we have today, a current innovation is more incremental innovation. The standard innovation is 10% improvement. With deep tech, what we can move to is a place where we have a order of magnitude innovation, which is way more achievable. It's not let's say the average innovation, but is way more achievable than in the past. And what happens here is that this is because the option space becomes dramatically bigger than it used to be in the past. And this is happening basically. One big enabler is the fact that the barriers to innovation are dramatically decreasing because of the previous waves of innovation that we have been seeing. So the cost of computing is going down, the cost of doing things is going down, the accessibility and the access to labs and so on and facilities is going dramatically up, so that in the past you need really a huge lab and millions before you can start a synthetic biology lab. Today, you can do it with much less. So barrier to innovation going down, but the real core driver that is expanding this option space is a different one. The barriers to entrance are the key enabler, but the driving forces that are having these are two convergences that are happening today. And this is, if you are a deep tech startup, or if you want to operate in the space, you really need to bear in mind, how can I leverage these convergences? Because this is really what enables this new approach to innovation. The first one is a convergence of approaches. And what we're seeing is that we had in the past science on the one side. I call design as the science to solve problem. And we had engineering in the middle, and the three were kind of siloed. And what we're seeing is that the three are coming together. We're bringing together the problem with the science, and we're connecting the two with engineering. So what successful deep tech startups do, they bring the three disciplines together in one place. And you have founders that are scientists, you have founders that have a background in engineering, they understand the overall package to be able to solve it. Because if you bring them together from the very beginning, you can look at things in a different way and come out with solutions that otherwise wouldn't be possible. So this is one of the big driving forces. The second one is a very fundamental piece that is happening, which is the convergence of technology. We have been knowing for years that technology and the combinatorial power of technology is very big. But what is happening now is something slightly different. What is happening today is that those technologies are converging. And when those are coming together, this is really when this option space explodes. And you can do things that were unthinkable before. One good example is synthetic biology, where you have matter and energy, cognition and computation, and sensing and actuation coming together in one place. So you have the biology and the advancement with CRISPR, you have the AI, which gives you a completely different power of computation, but also you have the automation, the process automation and the testing to be able to iterate. And when you bring these together and you blend them, it's not that you combine them, but they become a different unit somehow, then you can do things that were impossible. So we have expanded the option space, and there is the risk that you are lost because this option space is so big. So what is really important in this is having a problem orientation. This is the vector that allows you to orientate in this option space and avoids that you really wander around. So you always try to solve a specific problem, and you bring together, you leverage the approaches and the technology to solve a specific problem. If you want, this is the essence of what deep tech and approach toward innovation, but there is a very, very, very important core point that is missing in all of this, because it's not only that we are expanding the option space and making things possible that seemed impossible before as an average, as a default option, and not as the random option that happens once in a while. But what is happening is that the speed at which this is happening is dramatically increasing. And we have an expansion of the option space, but at the same time, we have a collapsing of the time to get to this new solution. And why is this possible? Because there is an application of the engineering cycle of design, build, test, learn. And when you have this cycle and you have this problem orientation and you go to this cycle, because of the advancement in the technology and because of the different characteristic of each of these steps, then the time is compressing dramatically and allows you to achieve things in 2 years that before had taken 20 years. And if you do this again and again, the time continues compressing. So the speed at which advancements are happening continues to increase, and this is what is making this even more powerful. So it's not a static expansion, but it's a continuous expansion of option and compressing of time. And why is this the case? Because we have generative AI to work on the design side. So we generate more options. We can quickly build and test, generate data. We learn through computation, and we can generate better solutions and go through this cycle faster and faster and get to solutions that were not possible before and not thinkable before. So if you're really thinking about what is deep tech, this is what deep tech is. It's a different approach of innovation that brings together approaches that as a convergence of technology and is leveraging the power of the DBTL cycle to compress times. And if you are a startup, if you are a company, you should look at things and say, how can I fit into this? How can I place myself? Am I leveraging the DBTL cycle? Am I leveraging the convergence of technology? Am I bringing bits, atoms, and brains together to be able to accelerate this advancement? So how can I do it if I am a startup, if I'm a company? This is particularly important for company because startup will naturally gravitate toward this, but established company, what they tend to do is, if I go back here, they forget the problem. They become basically hostage of the solution. And this is limiting their option space instead of going back to the problem and opening the option space. So what is really important, if you want to leverage this approach toward innovation, there are four heuristics. There is a heuristic that we put, there are four core questions that we need to consider to be able to really apply the deep tech innovation. The first one is really, you need to ask yourself, could reality be different? Can I look at things in a different way? This is going back to the original problem and say, okay, how can I get to this solution? Then you need, and this is the case, for instance, if you look at Moderna, which was an example of deep tech application, say, okay, what if instead of inserting something into the body of somebody, I insert into somebody the code for the body to produce what we want it to be produced? It's a major shift in what you're doing. Is how could reality be different? Then is there a way to make it possible? And then there's the whole way of testing that you can do it using mRNA. And then can you really prototype it quickly? And is it working? And then how can I scale it? And this is really important because you might think that the first two questions are the most difficult one. The truth is that if you really want to be successful, you need to look at all the four steps at the same time. They have different order of importance, but you need to start thinking when you start, can this scale? Because if it doesn't scale, no point in investing in time. If you can do it only in the lab, that this is not going to help you. And that's why bringing together the approaches, having an engineering mindset to be able to scale this stuff is really, really important. So those are the four core questions that as a deep tech startup, you really need to embrace and ask yourself every time you start a new project, how can you do it? Because only if you do that, you will be able to expand the time, the option space, and compress the time. So it sounds beautiful and nice, but how does it look like in reality? Because you say, okay, Massimo, this is all nice theory, but okay, can you give us a few examples of how this happens? And one example that I like a lot that shows you to how can you rethink this is the example of collagen. Collagen today is produced basically boiling the carcasses and the rest of animals, and you extract the protein, and this is what is used both in food and also in the cosmetic industry. And a startup called Geltor came up and said, what if instead of producing these, leveraging an extractive approach, so taking the carcasses and boiling them, what if we design bacteria to produce the protein and have a generative approach? And this opens a completely different space. So they did it, but what is really interesting when you look at this is that they just did not only replace the product, what they went further, they expanded the option space. So when they started, what people were asking when talking about collagen and you wanted to sell them collagen, they were asking you, can you make it look human, or can you make it that it doesn't smell fishy? Because a lot of the carcasses used were from fish rest. And they turned this completely around and they said, what, instead of asking me to make it look human and not smell fishy, what if I produce exactly the kind of collagen that you need for the specific application? And they have shifted these into the ingredient as a service, leveraging the power of bringing together matter, computation, and sensing and motion to create a new product category, a new approach that generates new value. And this is the way we need to look at deep tech, of rethinking, reframing the problem and creating value by doing so. It's not about making things cheaper, but is how do you add value into doing all of these. Now, one other very important core message that I think it's important to take away out of this conversation is that the days of the lone inventor in a garage are completely gone. When you operate in this environment of deep tech innovation, you cannot do that. The world is too complex, and what you're trying to do is too complex to be able to do it yourself. So it's really important to leverage the overall ecosystem to be able to operate in this. And that's why Singapore is actually turning at one of the hub of deep tech, because this ecosystem has been built. Places like SGInnovate, but also the government and also Hello Tomorrow are really working to foster this ecosystem. And only by leveraging and fostering this ecosystem, it is possible to have this kind of innovation emerge, because you will need, the startup, but the startup is a necessary condition, but not sufficient. You need corporate, you need government, you need universities, you need investors to come together. And the role of regulation is really, really important. Why the first chicken nuggets in the world were served in Singapore? Because the government is being part of this overall ecosystem. So it's really, really important to operate and think. Don't think that you're going to be able to solve it by yourself, but really look around. And the goal, and what I love to say about this, the one message is not about trying to get the biggest slice of the pie. It's all about in making the pie bigger in all of this. And this is something that we need, because this is the only way to overcome some of the biggest challenges that we have, but where we will need deep tech to solve this question. And one very good example is the world of textile, where we have been seeing that theoretically we could advance it and make it way more sustainable, but because there is a lack of this ecosystem approach, this is not happening. And what is happening is that every player is trying to get exclusivity on specific new material, new processes. They don't get the scale, they don't get the cost. So it really requires a very different approach to be able to scale and implement at systemic level this kind of innovation. And an industry like the textile one would really, really need it because it's a big polluter and create a lot of sustainability issue. So to summarize, there is a big, deep wave of innovation which is ahead of us, and we need this expanded option space and this collapsing time to get to solution, because we have a lot of pressing issues that we need to solve. But what I want to stress is that if we do it properly, we can not only solve this pressing issue, but it's an incredible economic opportunity, and it's an incredible investing opportunity to create value and basically finish the work that we started with the first and the second industrial revolution, but redoing it in a better way that is more sustainable than it was when we started. It was the best we could do back then, but now we have the tools to do it in a different way. And that's why we need to embrace this deep tech approach to be able to address those massive issues. So let me close here and open to any question, or we can move into the conversation. Ernest, I'm done with the presentation.
So thank you, Massimo. There's one question that's come in from Konstantinos. Massimo, do you think there's a balance or conflict between solving current real-life problems and building new markets and paradigms? Does a deep tech startup have to choose?
So I couldn't hear it.
I'll repeat the question. So Massimo, do you think that there's a balance, or is there conflict between solving current real-life problems versus building new markets and new paradigms? Does a deep tech startup have to choose?
No, it's the opposite. If you want to be successful, you really need to address the real-life problem. This is where the market opportunity is. Look, basically, the place we are in history right now is, in my view, comparable to the one where we went from being hunter and gatherers to become farmer. It's just that the possibility that we have is going, instead of being hunters and gatherers of resources, we can really become farmer at the atomic level. And this brings a completely redo about all the fundamental paradigms that are underlying our economy. And is really shifting from being exploitative, internal combustion engine, the collagen that is just reduced meat and other things, to generative. And this is a shift that is necessary, because otherwise we will never be able to have a sustainable environment. And this is a huge market opportunity. It's a $1 trillion market opportunity, because we have really the possibility to redo the economic and industrial tissue of our civilization. So there is absolutely no contrast. Actually, if you are not bringing the two together, you're missing an opportunity, a commercial opportunity.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Massimo. There's another question that's come in. So I'll address this one. It says, can we discuss more about the deep tech paradox report as to what VCs need to do to build the right ecosystem for investments? So we actually have another session on this sometime in September. So stay tuned for that. If you're here in this session, we have your details, and we'll be sending information on that. So you get to hear right from the horse's mouth come September. For the purposes of today's session, I think let's stick to the deep tech approach and considerations around the design, the DBTL cycle. And there's another question from Jonathan Tan. Massimo, were you touching on the concepts of open innovation and also some parts of design thinking? So in this case, I suppose the question relates to the confluence of approaches, right? That you're talking about, the three subsets. Yeah, and one more from, and this one's just a comment. It's not really a question. From Ruben Baker. Small comment. I just read a book review about the change from hunter-gatherers to farmers on The Economist. That shift took many thousands of years. So I suppose the question that is not being asked is how long will this shift take, right, to the fourth wave? And are we being overly optimistic?
I think, I mean, we have a slightly different starting point back then. I would say that we have 20 years, and the IPCC report that came out, we don't have time. We need to make it happen in the next 20 years. So it's not our choice. We have to do it and make it happen. We have a very, yes, it took a long time, but if you see over time, this time always the cycles are getting shorter and shorter. And back to the point about design thinking, when initially we started looking at this, I was coming from a design thinking, but there are two flaws or two problems with design thinking. One is that design thinking has become a little bit of a fashionable term that almost has lost its value. But I think that the second, and this is a more substantial point, is a lot of the design thinking piece is human-centered. And what I love to say about this approach is that it's problem-centered, it's not human-centered. Actually, we are in this situation because we've been a little bit too human-centered and not look at the problem. So I think you really need to have a broader view at this and really focus on the problems that we have, of which the human component is one, but not the only one. And that's why we shifted it from design to really problem focus.
Okay, thanks for that, Massimo. If you have any more questions as the session goes on, please do know that there will be another opportunity towards the end after the panelist session where we will be addressing your questions as well. But just to clarify, Massimo, will you be with us for the next half an hour?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so yeah, so you still can address your questions to Massimo after you've had some time to digest the thoughts. I know what he's shared has been a bit chunky and meaty and probably requires a bit of internal mastication to make the most of. So with that, thank you so much, Massimo, for sharing of your time and your thoughts here today. By way of introduction, my name is Ernest. I help run Hello Tomorrow here in Asia Pacific. And as the next part of the session, we wanted to bring on board real life examples, right? So startups within the deep tech space, corporates who are starting to realize as well the importance of the deep tech approach and the shortening of iteration cycles towards getting to solutions faster, quicker, and to talk about their real life experience with regards to how the deep tech approach is shortening their production cycles and the solution creation cycles. So with that as the context, we then hope that that we're looking at real examples that are close to the ground, case studies that are close to the ground that might be able to connect with you more as the audience. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our three panelists. So the first is Roy Tarakan. He's the Regional Director for Commercial Excellence at Cargill. Roy is an experienced business leader with over 22 years of track records in delivering breakthrough business and organization development results in the B2B food ingredients industry. Following that, we have Samsubra Gun Chowdhury. So Som is the co-founder and CEO of AI Palette. And AI Palette and Cargill have been working very closely together in the spirit of open innovation and in the spirit of speeding up solution identification cycles as well. So AI Palette is a Singapore-based AI startup backed by the government of Singapore and investors from both Silicon Valley and Europe. Using AI, predictive analytics, and image recognition, AI Palette helps its customers craft and launch new products by spotting and analyzing emerging consumer trends. So last but not least, we have Arun Narayanaswamy, who is the co-founder and head of products at SmartHeart AI, a startup that is very new and came into existence only during the COVID pandemic, but it's grown rapidly since then. Smart Hub AI helps organizations around the world leverage Edge and IoT to reinvent themselves and thrive in an ever-changing world. So I'm going to ask the three gentlemen to introduce themselves briefly and briefly introduce the work that you do and about how your work coincides with the deep tech approach that has just been shared by Massimo as well. If we can start perhaps with Som.
Yeah. Thank you, Ernest. I'm Som, the co-founder and CEO of AI Palette. At AI Palette, we help the food and beverage companies with their new product innovation. For example, if a beverage company wants to launch a juice in a market like Thailand, our platform will help them understand what kind of juice they should launch next. And to do that, we use AI and machine learning. We are on a mission to solve some of the hardest problems in the natural language processing domain in a multilingual setting for our customers. And I've been in the industry for 10 years, and one of the challenges that we always had is like the success of new products launched in the F&B industry is only 10 to 15%. And we were not able to solve the problem until AI as a field started emerging. And we had huge amount of data, and using that data and the latest NLP techniques, we are now able to identify and predict what the consumers are going to launch next, and thus help our customers to create consumer-ready products.
Thank you, Som. Perhaps if I can invite Arun to take the stage.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Arun Narayan Swami. I am co-founder and head of products at smartup.ai. So we are a edge and IoT company, where edge means everything that's outside the cloud or the data center. And we leverage this as the core, and we work with all the 5G, AI, robotics, and augmented reality. So these are the other technologies that we bring together. This is where this convergence brings a lot of new innovation, and I'm very excited to talk about that. So I'm based out of Bangalore, India, and very happy to be in this audience.
Thank you, Arun. And if we can go to Roy now, please.
Thank you, Ernest. Very happy to be part of this panel today. My name is Roy Tarakan. I'm based here in Singapore, and I work for Cargill. So I lead the commercial excellence effort for our food ingredient business in Asia Pacific. And my team works on how do we modernize our commercial activities to give the best customer experience. And that involves people, process, and technology. And today, listening to Massimo, I can say in the areas where we want to modernize or really make a big difference to our customers, possibilities are unlimited with the deep tech approach. And I'll talk about some of our experience in working with AI as a tool in the coming year as we progress.
Thank you, Roy. And since you ended it off with a thought on how the opportunities with the deep tech approach are limitless, perhaps if we can get you to share with our audience today some of the most exciting emerging innovations and problems that you believe can be solved, in your current portfolio or in your industry through this approach.
Yeah. So thank you for that. As I said, possibilities are unlimited. As Cargill, as an organization, I'll step back to talk about overall Cargill. I mean, looking at bringing that science and engineering and design together, we can, in the space we operate, which is the whole agriculture, the food ingredients, the risk management solutions, and the animal nutrition, it's a wide space where we could bring the different technologies together and really run for big, yeah. So, and I must say that some of the things which were, when I started my career, looked like fictional or something very aspirational, seems to be now quite real and possible. And that's what we have seen when we put all these technologies together. So for Cargill today, we are having three different approaches in the way we actually transform or innovate our organization. So looking at one is the space of digitalizing or modernizing our own core business, looking at how to drive efficiency, build costs down, optimize, and that's the space. And we can talk about, smart manufacturing and all those stuff that would actually make us better as an organization. So those innovations are quite internal. The other area is to really focus externally, where we talk about, technology to change the customer experience. Everything that can make a difference to customer, whether it is right from prospecting, pre-sales to post-sales with our customer, how do we help them to win in their marketplace and launch or, come up with products that would make them succeed. So that is one other area which we do. And there are a number of tools, technologies, products we are working on to really make a difference. And remember, when we talk about Cargill, it is not about manufacturers like big companies who are our customers, but farmers are our customers, retailers are our customers, a plant breeder could be our customer. So it's a huge space where we operate in. And so we'll work on a diverse solutions for making a difference to them. The other area where we work in Cargill is to look at the whole digital or the technology as a business itself. So we have our in-house incubators, business accelerator, where we work on solutions that may not be directly relevant to Cargill or for Cargill, but also for a wide-based planet as such, or outside world, wherever we can make a difference. And there are many examples come to our, you could see that in our site. A couple of examples would be talking about Digital Sathi, where we are actually working on a tool for farmers and making differences to their livelihood in India in terms of helping them with data analytics and a lot of support. So these are three areas where Cargill is working on using technology, bringing science and engineering together to make a difference to us as well as to the rest of the planet.
Thank you, Roy. So I want to pull Som into the picture now, because especially using the work that AI Palette and Cargill have done together as a case study, right, for the deep tech approach, and how the engagement is something that is very new and paves the way forward for a new way to understand the customer experience and try to figure out what the customer wants. Could you share? So Som, could you perhaps share with us, what a bit more about the background of what's been going on, and so that's number one, and number two is it will be like to build these kind of outcomes. We know that you've had to rely on automated learning and iteration, right, to get to the solutions that you want. Can you share with us about how this has accelerated the process?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
As I had mentioned, at AI Palette, we help the companies with the new product innovation by identifying what the consumers are going to want next, what are the trends that are going to come. So one of the ways that we do is through continuous iteration and automated learning, which is key for our product offering. And some of the few tasks are there where we rely on continuous feedback loops to improve our AI models without manual review or training models. So for example, our prediction or the forecasting models automatically triggers training whenever required, based on if the threshold value in terms of the accuracy fall beyond a certain limit. So that's where the continuous learning of the model really comes into play. And the other piece is also a little bit in terms of the human in the loop when it comes to AI, to make sure that there's a little bit of supervised learning, because when it comes to a domain like food and beverage, the domain understanding really becomes important and crucial for developing some of the features for the platform that are relevant for our customers.
Thanks, Som. So now moving to Arun. Arun, if you can just share with us, so when Massimo shared about the approach, the deep tech approach, it was really within the context that that there is a convergence of design, engineering, and science that has come together to help us approach problems very differently. With regards to the work that you do at Smart Hub AI, what have been some of the technological and infrastructural advancements that have started to exist, which allow you to do what you're doing today in Smart Hub AI, right, and create competitive advantages in the industry that you're operating in?
Sure. So our core is IoT, or Internet of Things, and Internet of Things is basically the ability to sense and control the physical world, where you are able to, let's say, gather data about what's happening around us, as well as be able to change the state of anything, whether it's a door that you want to open, or pan and tilt and zoom a camera, etc. So this is possible because of the cost of hardware coming down significantly in the past couple of decades, actually. So the biggest last 5 years has been the time where sensor and all other technology became so cheap and so ubiquitous that it's there almost anywhere that you want them to be, and this helps us leverage them. So this is one major technological event that actually that helped. Second is what's called edge, but then edge cannot be there without the cloud. So the cloud is the public cloud that you know, the private clouds, the managed clouds, and so many different clouds. And this cloud is also available at the very near where the action is happening, whether it's a sports stadium, whether it's a manufacturing facility. So bringing all that compute capability to the edge. And this is where technologies like 5G are making a big impact, where I mean, when 5G as a concept was introduced by telcos, nobody was ready to pay for the additional capability. Nobody wanted to say, I'll pay 50% more for a faster telephone connection. People were happy with what they had. But until you can think of newer applications. So this is what 5G enables with what's called the MEC, or the multi-access edge computing, where whatever applications you used to run in the cloud, if you can temporarily move them closer to where the consumer is. Let's say if I'm actually engaging in an augmented reality, where the latency matters. Or if I'm sitting in a stadium and I'm watching the match or any game live, but I also want to get other views. Instead of me going all the way to the cloud to pull down a live stream, what if that recording that's happening at the stadium is actually beamed to me right there right there in the stadium? It doesn't have to go to the cloud. So there are many such use cases that are actually going to be enabled with 5G as the world rolls it out. But all of this is enabling, so that now cloud is not somewhere there, it's actually right next to where the action is happening. The third is GPUs, or the graphics processing units, becoming a lot more easily available in various form factors, even available in a virtual form, so that I don't have to purchase a very expensive chip. I can use it. All of these are coming together, and for an example of where this is something that we leverage is if I am at a let's say an oil and gas processing facility, and I'm looking at this complex machinery, and as somebody who's responsible for monitoring the health of everything and safety of all the what's happening there, all I have to do is take my tablet and point it at what I'm seeing, and with the augmented reality, each of the machinery there overlaid on that, I can see the key parameters of that machine. I can see what issues are happening inside the machine overlaid on it. I can get historical data to see that how is this machine been performing in the last week, in the last day, etc. So this gives me right there, I can look at it, I can take an action. And some of this with 5G and edge computing, a lot of this has to happen right there. The real-time nature of all of this is very important, so that when I do something, I try jiggling a particular control, I want to see the effect of that right now. I don't want to wait for 2 minutes for it to kind of get processed, go to the cloud, and come back onto my tablet. This is all possible by bringing together all these technologies. And this is just one such example where we are bringing these technologies together to make something that's very tough to do even 5 years ago is very practical today.
Thanks, Arun. And I guess what's interesting about what you're saying as well is that it's not just about how the differences, or rather developments in the convergence of science, engineering, and design have come together to help you build Smart Hub, right, as an enabler, as a cloud enabler at the edge. But in fact, what the capabilities of what Smart Hub is able to help with is it feeds into that cycle, even for the users of your product. Yeah, so it's a bit meta, but but you guys are enable users to then iterate even faster and identify faster, of course, with the help of with newer sensors, more sensitive receptors of information and processors of information.
Absolutely. I mean, as a startup, our ability is to make quick decisions. Information flows very fast, as well as we are able to try out something, like talk to a customer, understand the problem, take the first step, as Massimo explained, take the first step the same day to see, okay, what if we tried this and implement it, deploy it in our cloud, which happens to be right now, our platform is running on OVHcloud, who's one of the sponsors on this for this event. And we are able to show the effect of that idea, the problem, whether the idea that we discussed in the morning and implemented and pushed to our application in the evening, the next day morning when we talk to the customer, we can actually validate, is this actually making a difference? What do we learn from that one day? And then iterate. This is very much something that's possible today, and that's that whole cycle. What Massimo talked and what you just highlighted is very important, because it's not all, Rome is not built in one day. So you'll have to kind of keep taking small steps one after the other, and you definitely learn each day, and then you apply that. Very true.
Okay, and in this process of learning and iteration, right, to generate the right kind of hypothesis to find out what the correct external outputs have to be for the client or for the product, have you been able to, to what extent would you say like this is an automatable process, right? Or like how do you speed up that cycle?
So this is where, of course, we use a lot of AI modeling. So for example, we go into a building, and this is one of the spaces where IoT is used a lot, especially after COVID. There's a lot more of automation, and all the way from people using audio video equipment when you're in the office and talking to colleagues who are probably working from home, as well as all the other building systems that's supposed to ensure air circulation and avoid overcrowding, etc. All these. So we go into a building, you cannot expect somebody to give a nice list of all the devices that's there, their IP addresses or whatnot. So we have to go discover them, understand what are those devices. We have a bunch of adapters to talk to these devices, dynamically figure out which are those adapters, pull them down, talk to those devices, understand the normal patterns. What is normal for a building will be different from another building. So it depends on the occupants and other conditions. So to determine what is normal for that environment, then determine what is automatically start determining what is an anomaly, what is something. Like every day, let's say 20 people walk through a particular door, and then suddenly you see 100 people walk through a same door. It's an anomaly. So it's probably something different has happened, and you probably want to somebody has to investigate that further. So detecting issues automatically, and seeing if this is this is really an issue, and then putting that learning back into the system. So the system learns much same way a human learns. This within a week or 2 weeks, you actually get to have a system that understands the usage of the building, the occupants, what their preferences are, etc., etc. So it's like a friend who actually gets accustomed to you, and then your best friend knows everything. You don't have to say anything; it just happens, right? So it's something to that effect. Yes,
Thank you,
so
Arun.
that learning is very important.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing on those things. So I want to circle back to Roy now. As a representative of a large corporate that deals with very different types of dynamics compared to a startup. So when we look at the convergence of these technologies or these different sectors, and how it's speeding up cycles, has this changed the organization's approach to R&D and to its consideration of external innovations and how it chooses to work with external innovation? So I'm hoping that we might be able to find some insights for both the corporate SME members of audience here today, as well as the startups who might be looking at collaboration models with Cargill.
For sure, Ernest, things have changed significantly. And I would say, as a company of almost 160 years, there was a time when we would actually do things ourselves internally in our pace. But now, the world is changing so rapidly that we cannot do everything by ourselves. And that's where in the recent past, we can see we collaborate, because we realize that, with our standard SOPs being that, using size to an advantage has its, positives as well as some of the challenges. And hence, we want, whenever now in innovation, we are using more and more startups who can help us with technology solutions very quickly. And so that we can be agile, we can be cost effective, we can be much more accurate for our customers. And that's where we, one of the examples in the R&D space we worked was with AI Palette, because some time back, it was our aspiration, if we could give solutions to our customers, say the Nestle's or the Mondelez of the world, to produce, to launch products which will be very successful and which would be liked by their customers. Now, to do that, we need to get these consumer insights. And the traditional way was going to the market, doing consumer research, and it would take the whole product life cycle would take 2 years to launch a product, which is now not workable at all with the pace of life. And that's where we looked at, working with AI Palette on really looking at how we can use the social media data, where today consumers express their choices, their preferences so easily in the social media, use it, incorporate that in our innovation, in the solutions we develop for our customers. And that has really made things much faster. So now it is cost effective, it is much more faster. The chances of failures are minimized. Of course, we need to do a blend of what comes out of the data and maybe a validation, but still the whole product life cycle has reduced significantly. And then we are able to actually make our customers win in their marketplace. So, and that's what we have done actually with AI Palette, and we are very positive in terms of the way we are using the whole AI algorithm or the predictive analytics to predict the future trends. And also, and not only looking at some of the data, but millions of data points on a real-time basis, and then co-develop with our customers, be much more proactive in our approach with our customers. So that is what yeah.
Okay, yeah, sorry for interrupting, but thank you. And I guess on to a question that came in, and Andre seems especially interested in what are the key reasons for the fruitful collaboration between Cargill and AI Palette. So I'll leave this open to both Roy and Som. And I guess the unspoken question here is what lessons are there, right? That have emerged from the collaboration model between the both of you that others can learn from.
Yeah, I can go first from the startup point of view. So so few key things made it really fruitful. So the first and foremost was being open to a new way of doing things. So what AI Palette is doing is one of its kind, and we are the pioneer in this particular space. So for a corporate who is one of the key players in the ecosystem for deep tech, as Massimo mentioned earlier, so here the corporate was really open in terms of what we are trying to do. B, they were also ready to invest in learning and understanding the new technology, how they can use. And when I say investment, it's not in terms of the money, but also in terms of the time they spent to learn how they can use AI to understand the consumers better. And finally, also giving the right feedback so that we can circulate back, improve our models, improve our algorithm, and build it in a way which makes it much more useful to Cargill. So those are the three of the key requisites for a key successful collaboration with a corporate.
So adding on to what Som mentioned, and I partially answered it, but for us, it was speed. It was about being more proactive with our customer. It was about understanding the needs of our customers, consumers. So that's where we realized that, as a large organization, we probably do not have all that capability or the expertise needed, and developing that internally will take very long time. So that's where we said we need to collaborate. And when we looked around, we found AI Palette to be building that expertise, the specialization around using predictive analytics or AI as a tool to help us to innovate with our food customers. And working with with the AI, AI Palette was very interesting. In fact, though we were not ready internally fully to understand, it was, but then with a little bit of change management effort, and also once we saw the benefit, I think that's what the whole team got much more engaged and willing to look at it. And also there was some proof. Once we have the initial success, we can see there is much more of receptiveness and willingness and engagement internally to work on solutions. And I think, I know Som would see now that more requests coming from our team to come up with many solutions for not only food, but for even other areas and multiple categories and countries now.
Thank you both. So I guess what really interested me when seeing that Cargill would be part of this session was the fact that Cargill operates very firmly in the physical world, right? With its in the food and agriculture space, in terms of industrial products, and it's precisely the convergence of these types of technologies, with the emergence of synthetic biology, that's coming up, that's allowing for the precision production of things with physical attributes that are very specific, that are much needed in the world, and the change of how and the potential for change in terms of how these things are produced. So I know that's very core to this deep tech approach as well. Like just now, Massimo was sharing, he was talking about Geltor, that's taking on an entirely new approach to the production of collagen. So to circle back again to Andre's question, I would like to direct this question to Massimo, who is our established thought leader here. Which industries do you find ready today to embark on this deep tech approach?
Specifically, when it comes to shifting from exploitative to generative, I think the one that are really leading the pack is biopharma, because this is where they're used to it and they also have a deep understanding. I think agriculture actually is closest, and then food and cosmetic are the next one. I think that in the longer term, the biggest potential is going to be on the material side, but it's going to require a lot of time to get there. And it would be wrong, as we have seen actually Zymergen, they started there and it was not so smart down the line. So I think food is where we're going to see a lot of this shift happening in the months to come. I'm talking months. It was not a mistake. I was not saying years. In the months to come, there is a lot of building in that space. But agriculture is also a nice place where you see the convergence of data, sensing, computation, matter. These are the places where I think a lot is going to happen.
Thanks, Massimo. And there's a question from Langlin here saying, Roy, what would you say to other corporations who are still on the fence about open innovation? This is pretty open-ended.
Yeah, I would say
yeah.
definitely, collaborate. That's the only way to go, and be open-minded to work. I mean, if we can't do everything alone by ourselves, that approach doesn't work. The whole success is in collaborating with the best outside of the industry, and we have seen a lot of success, and I think that should motivate others also to follow the same path. And I would add to also, Massimo, I mean, looking at the deep tech, definitely I'm super excited as somebody in Cargill, is because of the application for a company like Cargill in agriculture space, in food space is really, and we have some example very similar to collagen, where we have now produced stevia through fermentation technology. And I think I would invite the participants to also go to our sites and look for EverSweet as a product.
Thanks, Roy. Okay, so a question has come in. I understand we're about at the end of it, so I'll try to tie it up quick. But a question has come in from Moina asking how we might be able to use AI, deep learning, etc., in the field of computational biology regarding drug discovery and advancements to help researchers deal with problems such as protein folding, disorders such as Alzheimer's, etc. So I know that no one here is in the biopharma space. But I don't know if anyone might be prepared to deal with this.
I'm happy to take this one. There is already a lot happening in this space, and I think we continue to push the boundaries. There are good companies doing some of it, Arceta is doing some of it, and DeepMind has just released their piece. I think the core point, so this is happening right now. There are two core messages from my side. One is it's really about the convergence. And you really need to bring biological intelligence with artificial intelligence together and blend them. It's not about combining them, but you really need to have the deep understanding. You cannot brute force your way through. You cannot, or you can do it, but it's not the right approach. It's just about really bringing it down to this. And then I think that some of the advancements that are going to happen on the technology side, on the computation side, are going to really bring this one level up in terms of what is possible, be it on the algorithm side, but being also once quantum computing is available, then we will possibly be able, it will be possible to simulate cells and doing things like that, which right now are not doable from a pure computational power point of view.
Yeah, and I think one more, I was just reading something just the other day sent over by a teammate. Chinese researchers have just mapped the full the full suite of neurons within a monkey in a monkey's brain, which is something that has not yet been done for human brain, simply because computational power actually isn't yet sufficient. So I am very curious, just putting it out there, I'm very curious as to the advancements that are taking part in the non-English speaking ecosystems of the world, and the applications of computational power to very physical, to things, to issues that are more physical in nature. We are 3 minutes past. One last question. Hi there, Massimo. I would like to ask how the deep tech approach helps the aviation industry, for example, the in-flight entertainment. But I'm sure you're happy to cover more than in-flight entertainment.
This is one place where you're seeing all the advancement happening, the shift toward electrical. The matter part is about battery storage, energy consumption, materials for these, the whole computation. So this is a very good place where the deep tech approach is happening beyond the entertainment on board. I think as good as it is, I think that the real thing is really changing the materials, the components, and also even the propulsion that is possible. So there are people that are really looking at that. So it's really good place where we're seeing a lot of it.
Okay, thank you so much for that. So I would like to take this opportunity to just summarize some few key points and takeaways from the session. I guess the first is that when looking at developing solutions, we need to consider very carefully the latest that's coming up through the convergence of design, engineering, and science, and exploring the possibilities that are there. But the work that's going on there has to be very specifically factored towards large real problems that are on the ground. and we shouldn't get lost in the sea of optionality that these new solutions present to us. And one of the ways to go about doing this is to find to vector ourselves towards the right problem. And finding solutions to this problem is to find ways to automate the feedback cycles and iterate as quickly as we can using the latest developments, especially computationally, to help us achieve the results that we need. So with that, I would like to thank all of our panelists, Massimo, Arun, Sam, and Roy, for their time today. Thank you so much. The four of you have been so generous with your time and your thoughts. And I want to thank the audience as well for taking the time to be here with us today. We are here for any questions. After this, you know how to reach the organizers. And I would like to pass the time back to Jody from SGInnovate to close us off.
Thank you so much, Ernest, and I totally echo everything that he has said in terms of summarizing our discussion points for the session, as well as thanking all of the panelists. Thank you to Massimo for your sharing of the report. Thank you for Ernest for the moderation, and for Roy, Arun, and Sam for joining us as well. It was definitely very interesting to hear the examples of your deep tech use cases, as well as understanding the convergence of technologies and sectors and how we can help to speed up innovation. So for our attendees, thank you for tuning in. And even though we're slightly behind time, I hope that you enjoyed the session as well. As Ernest mentioned, please keep a lookout for the rest of our activities from SGInnovate as well as Hello Tomorrow. And also please keep a lookout for our post-event EDM, which will include the reports from Massimo's sharing, as well as our post-event recording of the session. We do hope to see you again at the rest of our future events, and please have a great day ahead wherever you're tuning in from. And we hope to see you soon again. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you.